Hello, everybody. We're going to get started, and I'm just so happy to see all of you and welcome. I'm Deborah Davidson, founder and artistic director of Catalyst Conversations. I'm very happy to welcome you to a conversation on this auspicious evening, the same day as the Harvard commencement. Just so happens it happened. I would like to thank the Manship Artists Residency for presenting this conversation with us, and I'd especially like to extend thanks to Executive Director Rebecca Reynolds, Patty and Michael Rosenblatt, Mags Harries, and the Manship Board Chair Joanne Castano for all their input over several years in realizing this program with us. I'd also like to thank the Center for Astrophysics for hosting our program here this evening. And thanks to the Cambridge Art Council, our founding partner, our board, and all our volunteers who help us out, and to those of you who have donated recently to us. Catalyst Conversations was founded in 2012 to open a critical path for dialogue between the arts and sciences. And we present intimate and provocative conversations between artists, scientists, and the public. We are interested in connecting the two through programs, educational outreach, and public events like this one, which demonstrate the important conversation and synergy between art, science, and technology. And this evening's topic, as you know, is We Are Stardust, Connecting the Spheres. Thank you. Stars have a life cycle. They're born, they pass through middle age, and they die. The birth of a star determines much of how it lives its life. For that reason, researchers study star-forming regions, the interstellar clouds of gas and dust that are both the raw materials and the environment for star birth. The research here at the Center for Astrophysics centers on humanity's greatest unresolved questions about the nature of the universe. These questions have been pondered for generations, and its research is bringing us closer to answers than ever before. Manship Artist in Resident Andrew S. Yang, over here, and composer and director of Multiverse Concert Series and resident composer at the Center for Astrophysics, David Ibbett, will explore the fascination we all have with our relationship to the celestial sphere. Both of our speakers echo these existential concerns in their respective practices. They are both passionate and inquisitive, and they both contemplate our place in everything. Just a little bit about the Manship Residency. It's situated in what was once the summer residence and studio of Paul Manship in Gloucester, known as the sculptor of Prometheus, the fountain at Rockefeller Center in New York. Manship and his family of artists drew inspiration in part from both the landscape and the Cape Ann community and hosted some of America's greatest visual, performing, and literary artists and, importantly, scientific thought leaders. Andrew Yang works across the sciences, art, and history to examine our relationship with nature and culture. He is trained as a biologist and brings his scientific inquiry to his art projects. During his residency at Manship, he had been researching one of Paul Manship's iconic work called Celestial Sphere, a large sculpture representing 66 different constellations drawn from various cultures. Permanently installed at the United Nations in Geneva, it was intended to convey a sense of both cosmic and geopolitical harmony. This was in 1939. Andrew is developing a piece called Terrestrial Sphere to reinterpret Manship's work as one looking inward, focused on the ecosystems of planet Earth that acknowledges animals as ecological agents rather than simply symbolic. In his work, David Ibbett has sonified the light of black hole galaxies as musical notes and chords woven into a dramatic electro-symphonic score that reveals a hidden universe beyond the scope of our eyes. The richness of science is experienced through the universal language of music. He says that, quote, "We believe that to change the perception of science is to change the perception of reality and our society." So with that, Andrew will start. Each speaker will speak about 15 minutes, and then we'll gather for a conversation.
Thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you to the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard, and special thanks to Rebecca Reynolds also, and Patty Rosenblatt and Joanne from the Manship Residency. I'm uncharacteristically nervous today. I think it's just we live in anxious times. I'm not sure. So pardon me if I speak too fast. I also, in preparing this talk, realized I actually have a lot of projects about the cosmos. So I ended up making an hour-long talk that I've hopefully on the T ride here whittled down to 15 minutes. I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I want to just actually touch upon this title, which is great, and some things about my previous work that will lead to the thoughts that I'm developing with the Manship Residency. The first is the idea that we are Stardust, which Deborah told me she actually got from the Harvard Astrophysics webpage, but is a standard notion, right? Here's Neil deGrasse Tyson. We are Stardust brought to life, then empowered by the universe to figure itself out. And we have only just begun. Or Joni Mitchell. We are Stardust, billion-year-old carbon. We are golden. And now we got to get ourselves back to the garden. But the one I like the most is actually that of Carl Sagan, for its specificity, I suppose. The nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We're made of star stuff. So that juxtaposition, I think, really strikes me. You know, it's a statement of scientific fact as well as a sentiment of self-understanding. And it acknowledges sort of our material existence as a matter of mattering, right? I mean, what's personal to us is both material, but it's also so much more than that. And I think this continual shape-shifting of the material into these other forms is part of one thing that really interests me. My own daughter, it turns out, is named Stella, in part to acknowledge this very sort of material fact about things. And that actually had inspired me to make this sculpture. Oh, I'm sorry, it's very yellow, green, but just imagine it's not so yellow. This sculpture back in 2012 called Stella's Stoichiometry, all things being equal, 6 pounds, 13 ounces, which is the exact number and material proportion of carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus in her body at that weight for a human, but found in other things that I could buy at the grocery store. So after after excessively long calculations in Excel and various math, you can get from rock candy, canola oil, water, arginine powder, oyster shells, the correct proportions and amounts of every single kind of atom that makes up her body, right? I ended up updating that actually 7 years later for a different exhibition. This is all Stella's Stoichiometry, all things renewed at 40 pounds. In this case, there's fertilizer, there's chalk, there's coal, there's Legos, to acknowledge the things that, of course, make up her life, and of course, now with microplastics, actually probably also make up her as well as all of us too. But that's just all to say, the idea of the Stardust really resonates with me pretty strongly. And suffice to say, you can imagine my surprise and my delight to find this photo of the sculptor Paul Manship that when I was going through some of his archives last summer. You can see there, and I'll talk more about the Manship Residency in a moment, but here we have basically his daughter, Sarah Janet, in the left arm, and the sculpture portrait of her in the right. So I feel like Paul Manship and I already must have some kind of kindred thing going on. So as we're I'll talk more about Manship and the wonderful residency that's been going on in the research in a minute, but I also want to touch on this notion of connecting the spheres. So Deborah's already mentioned, you know, this idea of a celestial sphere, but given that we're already star stuff, you know, it's true that if you simply look in the mirror, then you have a moment to look at the universe. Or by looking at another person, which was also the nature of this project I just wanted to mention briefly, called Interviews with the Milky Way. It's a 2-screen video project. I don't have time to show it to you. It's at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, but had 2 different interviews. One with who I believe is here today, astrophysicist Dr. Jeffrey Oishi, and then who's, you know, a bona fide part of the Milky Way, right? And my mother, who's the one who had brought me into the Milky Way. So those 2 video pieces, if you want to look, you can find them online. There's also, I wrote an essay for the Centers for Human and Nature a few years back that extract in more detail that interview that I had with my mother, actually talking about this relationship between sort of birth, life, identity, relationality, the cosmos, and the self. All right, so to the extent that we are stardust, I would argue, though, that there's still a persistent estrangement that almost all of us have to the cosmos as a whole, right? It lurks within us, this universe, and yet at the same time, there's a certain kind of distance. I think contemporary culture in general sort of isolates us from the cosmos in different kinds of ways. And I can think of no more striking a symptom of that than when I was reading my daughter Stella a book a number of years ago, when she was maybe 2. And I was reading her book to her before bed, and I turned to a page in the book. It wasn't this exact page, but it was a page like that. I don't have the book anymore. And she said, "What are all those things on the page?" And I said, "Well, those are stars in the sky." And she said, those aren't stars in the sky. The sky doesn't look like that at all. At which point my heart kind of sunk into my feet, because I realized, well, of course that's true for her, because she was born in Chicago and raised in Chicago. That's where we were living at the time. And she doesn't get to see the starry sky at night. This is Chicago at night. It's one of the most light polluted cities in North America. And you're lucky to see a couple planets, maybe a star, but mostly what you see are airplanes flying into O'Hare and Midway. Right? And so just thinking about this estrangement really struck me. I mean, of course, any of you were around during the 23 blackout on the East Coast might remember too, right? Here's a photo of a site the day before, and that was a photo of the same site the day of, right? The cutting off of all of that light pollution suddenly makes the whole Milky Way suddenly visible, right? So this is just this idea of connecting to these spheres of identity, of existence, is something that I'm very interested in. And it makes me think then, too, of course, of this. Around the same time I had that moment with my daughter on the children's book, I was spending a lot of time watching a lot of old Carl Sagan on YouTube, because what else do you do, like, at 3 a.m. when you're having a bottle feeding a kid? And so anyway, one of the early ones I really wanted to show a clip from.
A handful of sand contains about 10,000 grains, more than the total number of stars we can see with the naked eye on a clear night. But the number of stars we can see is only the tiniest fraction of the number of stars that are. What we see at night is the merest smattering of the nearest stars, with a few more distant bright stars thrown in for good measure. Meanwhile, the cosmos is rich beyond measure. The total number of stars in the universe is larger than all the grains of sand on all the beaches of the planet Earth.
Now, when I usually mention this in a talk, everyone's like, wow, that seems really hyperbolic. But we're at the Center for Astrophysics. I think you all know that he's wrong. That, in fact, it turns out there's 10 times as many stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth, but according to the Hubble Deep Field, right, estimates, right? So thinking about that and thinking about this, I had an opportunity to make a work for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, and I decided to do this piece called A Beach for Carl Sagan. And so what you have here are some sand dunes. There's a video piece. There's actually multiple components I can't quite get into. But these are the kind of sand dunes that you might find on actually the coast of Michigan, Illinois and Michigan. And you can still find some of these dunes today, even in present-day Chicago. And so I wanted to sort of create a model of the Milky Way and all the stars that you cannot see, but then now can see through this interesting analogy of sand. So what we have here is a scale model of the Milky Way galaxy. It's 100 billion grains of sand, which also took a lot of math. It's about 7 tons of sand. It turns out to be roughly 100 billion grains, at least for this brand of sand. That sort of evokes, again, the place that you are in Chicago, on Lake Michigan, but all of the things, of course, that you can't see because of our light pollution and the estrangement that we have. So this scale model of the Milky Way is sort of gesture towards both the visibility, the invisibility, the ability for metaphor and for science, of course, to make things available to us that aren't going to be available otherwise. There's also 4 or 5 FM radios hanging by their cords playing white noise, because it turns out 1% of that is part of the cosmic microwave background. We don't have time to get into that. But this just leads us then to the Manship Residency. So this is the Manship Artists Residency in Gloucester. And I've been very honored to have this sort of extended residency there. I've been going for a week the last 2 summers, and I'm hoping to go there again this summer, maybe indefinitely, we'll see, as I develop a project. So my first take on that was just to look around, take photographs of the mysterious things I could find. Still not sure what's underneath there. The ecology, the landscape, right? These quarries filled with water now. You know, I do what most artists would do in such a situation. I did responded, you know, some drawings, some watercolors, focusing on this landscape and the place. Some collages too, just to sort of get some sense and some orientation. Some of Manship's old china is still there, so I thought maybe I'd try to collage it. But for some time, I was actually really trying to figure out what my access point was to the residency. A lot of people, when they go to artist residencies, it's like an escape to make work in isolation. But in some sense, that residency could be anywhere, because you're not doing any work about that place. But if we had more time, I could sort of talk about one of the core sort of principles of most of my projects is that it is about whatever place I'm making the work. And so I really wanted to try to think about, you know, that's what, of course, these things about the quarries are connecting to. But I also wanted to somehow connect these spheres of place and person to Manship himself and his artistic legacy. Being an Art Deco figurative sculptor, there wasn't actually a natural connection necessarily. There he is, though, working with some assistants on Prometheus that Deborah mentioned at Rockefeller. He also is a consummate, wonderful sculptor of animals. These are the 3 bears. There's in Central Park. I just saw them in the Met Museum, though. They're inside now. So then I was grateful and lucky to have the opportunity to start looking at Manship's archives. So Rebecca Reynolds generously allowed me in to sort of look at not just sort of his keepsakes and the documented works otherwise, but some of the primary materials that he was working on in developing his things. And then if you look, you can find something like this, a folder that says Celestial Sphere. What could be inside? It's a series of really interesting, dynamic drawings of creatures, really all about the cosmos, because these, in this case, Draco and Ursa Minor, are constellations. And each one of those numbers are stars, and 3, 4, 2, 1 represents the magnitude, if you know, of those stars, which is its brightness, right, from 1 to 4. So already we have a hint of just how much detail, right, that Manship's going into to understand. These aren't just any stars. These are stars with their precise luminosities, right? We have Pisces. We have Tucana, which is unfamiliar to me, because what's really interesting about this was his amalgamation of constellations both from the Greek and Latin traditions, but also Assyria and Babylonia. Orion, Argo. And so along with these wonderful drawings of these different constellations, preparatory clearly, were also photographs that were documenting different parts of this celestial sphere. So there, of course, we had Scorpio and Libra, and here we have Scorpio and Libra, and a few others thrown in there. And I just really love these photographs. I think they are remarkable lighting, even, to just like give this atmosphere actually of the celestial in and of themselves, even though I know they're just largely for documentary purposes. So I just wanted to show you the sculptural versions of the drawings that you just saw. And there's Cancer, Gemini, Canis, 66 constellations overall, as Deborah mentioned. And just thrown in there, there's Paul Manship, the sculptor, put himself in as a signature, which I really appreciated. So this is the celestial sphere. 7.7 tons of bronze alloy, 13.5 feet in diameter. It was supposed to be 950 stars. There's actually, I think, 860, 66 constellations here on the grounds of the League of the United Nations now, then the United Nations. This is from a postcard in Manship's documents. And just to mention, right, as Deborah said, this was supposed to be sort of, as Manship described it, representing the interrelationship of constellations to create a harmonious ensemble. But at the same time, of course, this was a metaphor for international cooperation and world peace. The Wilson Monument, as it's also called, or memorial, is supposed to sort of be part of one of the founding piece of art that's supposed to speak to the cooperation that the League of Nations aspires to. Now, of course, this was installed in August 1939. There was this interesting letter in his archives that talks about, from two of the people involved in the installation, dated September 1st, what a most extraordinary coincidence, and almost a sardonic one, that the Woodrow Wilson Memorial is being put in place on the League of Nations grounds as the next World War is just breaking out, exclamation mark. In fact, September 1st is the day that Germany invades Poland. So it was, in fact, the very day, in the case of this correspondence, that the war broke out. So more about, just quickly, the celestial sphere. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I'm really still in preparation. But it's just an absolutely gorgeous piece of artwork. It took 3 years. I think it's arguably his most ambitious piece of work. It was mechanized, it moves, and the amount of effort that was put into it was truly remarkable. Again, here I am just marking out all the stars and Ophiuchus here, the serpent holder. And then if you look into his notes, there he is, right? Putting how many stars are going to be in each constellation that he has in the piece. And again, how many of each magnitude. So his attention to detail, his commitment to the science, his friendship with astronomers at the American Museum of Natural History to help him develop this so that it was really astronomically correct, or as accurate as possible, was truly remarkable. Right? The positions of these constellations themselves matched their positions in the night sky. So, presented with this set of photographs made me kind of think as an analogy of the puzzle and problem that a lot of astrophysicists face when they're taking photographs of the sky. And they don't necessarily have a wide enough angle of view to capture something is just as large as what they're looking at, like the cosmos. Or the curvature of the celestial dome itself, of course, makes it so that you can't capture everything at once. So it made me think of these, what are called photomosaics, right? Photographs of astronomical objects that basically are stitched together from multiple photographs. These are just some examples by amateurs in this case, but professionals still end up using this technique even today. So there you're seeing all where the overlapping photographs might make a whole. This is a recent one, 600 photo images from the Hubble and photomosaic to show the Andromeda Galaxy. But this can also be for smaller objects as well. So this is the Orion probe that in 2022, and that's a real photograph, passed by the moon and took a number of images, and that's, of course, the Earth. So this is the moon in general, but this is the moon from Orion's view, right? A photomosaic stitch, because its camera simply can't capture the whole, much less a whole that, of course, is spherical. So that kind of inspired me to take that same approach with the celestial sphere. So I've been creating a sort of photomosaic of all of the photographs that Russell took documenting the sphere and stitching them together because there's just no other way for me to capture, right, and get a sense. I have yet to go to Geneva to see the sphere itself. There's 2 smaller spheres. But yeah, so this is kind of what I'm sort of working through as process ideas for a project on the celestial sphere. I just want to show you some of the details of this as you stitch the images together, kind of what it looks like. And of course, if you stitch it a different way, you get a different arrangement. It's just like when you peel your clementine. All of the different shapes that you get from that globe. So, this version of it, I just wanted to show you, they're all just interrelated. It is this yellow and orange and this blue sphere. I started to think about the celestial sphere and, of course, the cosmos. And the stars represent, naturally, the parts of this body. We gather a picture of the natural and the mythological from these patterns. But when I looked at these long enough, I started to think about, sorry it's so blurry, how they don't just look like constellations to me, although I'm familiar with a number of constellations. They also look like other images that I see a lot in terms of like my own teaching and some of the work that I do. Even kind of looks like this one, kind of looks like this one. And these are all food webs. These are all ecological webs, and each of those dots are in stars. Each of those dots are species that are relating to each other in terms of eating and being eaten. So I'm just pulling these from the scientific literature. That one diagram there goes with this a complementary diagram from the research paper talking about, I think, pelicans, tadpoles, and fish. And then here's another one, ecological network assembly. And they pull out two different kinds of food webs, which makes sense. It's just completely parallel and analogous to all of the starry skies and constellations, with which, of course, you can pull out smaller constellations, smaller images, smaller kinds of configurations to generate different kinds of meaning. And so I'm kind of thinking that I want to develop some idea of the celestial sphere as a terrestrial sphere and create constellations. And I don't know if this is going to be a sculpture or a video or anything else yet. This is still where I am in the research. But to really kind of meld and think about the terrestrial sphere in relation to the celestial sphere. Because after all, the terrestrial is completely celestial at the same time. But when you look at this image, my God, it's like an active ecology, right? This buzzing, blooming confusion here looks just as much like an ecological web as it does a set of constellations in the sky. But I feel like I want to just connect these spheres of the terrestrial and the celestial together in the name of thinking about also like the ecology of Cape Ann maybe more seriously. So for example, the firefly is a very long-term resident of the Manship Artists Residency space. I know the area is called Starfield because of the predominance of fireflies there. And so could that take the place of the dragon or Draco? We have Argo as the ship, but what if that was a lobster boat? So I'm starting to develop, and of course there's plenty of stars in Cape Ann, more so underwater than maybe above. So I've been developing a list of species that are native to Cape Ann that I want to sort of build a constellation out of, right? That will be interrelating into this sort of meta-constellation of interactions between these species, many of which also sometimes are endangered, to try to draw this collection between the terrestrial and celestial spheres. So work in progress. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. This is my first Catalyst Conversations, but I think I've really been missing out because this is so my jam. All these amazing connections between the stars, between ecology, art, and science, and well, all the things that make us as human. And it's kept me very busy in sort of recent years with my activities as a composer. And I want to talk to you about the project that I sort of used to connect things together, the Multiverse concert series. We named it so we sort of, we don't have to decide the limits. We can we can expand as we go. And some of the things we've been doing over recent years, and kind of some of the craft of connecting music and science, because I think when you think of science music, first thing that pops into your head, okay, who thought Star Wars? Be honest. Who thought Holst, the planets? Yeah. So I mean, those are both the Holst is, of course, is kind of about science, but it's much more about the mythology than it is about the actual planets. And Venus famously is the goddess of love, but if you go to real Venus, you're going to have a bad time. You're going to get melted down into slag. So and they did know. There's a lot of stories there to tell with music, and I feel that music is very well equipped to tell certain stories that are coming out of the science. So, I just like to let music kind of speak for itself. So I'm going to play you a little bit of a recent piece. I like to write symphonies. It's an old genre, the symphony, but it's a good vehicle for telling a longer story, and it's always really been a multimedia art form, bringing in all different instruments and kind of the spectacle. And we like to put them in a planetarium. So there's multiverse. So I'm going to play you a little bit of Mars Symphony, which we did with the Museum of Science last summer. This is a movement called Valles, which is about the Valles Marineris, which used to be a river valley. Now it's a canyon. And we sort of imagine that there is a civilization has made their home on Mars, and they're singing about it in the way that we might sing about the valleys on Earth.
Alas, alas, world over and over. Alas, alas, take me down to the waters. Shall know itself through us. Shall know itself through us. Take me back to the water. Take me home. Take me home. Take me
So I picked that one because I stole some lyrics from a famous poet who made an appearance. We are the way away for the universe to know itself. The universe shall know itself through us. Of course, Carl Sagan making another appearance. So yeah, I'm glad we're going to have fun chatting about Carl Sagan, I think. Let's spend the whole time talking about him. Yeah, hugely inspirational for so many of us, I think, in different fields. And I think, he was an artistic soul. And you watch his programs. He had Vangelis doing the music for those who did the music for Chariots of Fire and Blade Runner. There's a real artistic vision there. And of course, Anna Druyan, his partner, who co-wrote, she should get more credit. So these projects, they take different forms. And sometimes orchestras, sometimes in a planetarium. But they have, my favorite one, we went out to the National Academy, the Kavli Auditorium in DC, which was quite the trip. to do Black Hole Symphony, which I'll be talking about. People ask me how I got into this field, and I said, well, I was. That's me. It's kind of an early headshot. I should probably update it, but that's my piano from England, and now it's in my studio. We shipped it over in a crate, and it made the trip. So it was pretty obvious from an early age I was going to do music. It's sort of made to respond. But then where'd the science come from? Well, it's this gentleman here, my dad, who is standing proudly next to his bioreactor at the University of Nottingham, who was cooking up pea vine left over from agricultural processes to try and turn it into biofuels. So he would come home and sort of drawing molecules on napkins, and there were stacks of new scientists around the house. And for the longest time, I sort of thought, well, how I've got to pick one. And the UK system was horribly, probably still is, horribly siloed, where they, you get to sort of 15, they say, oh, you want to do music? Okay, drop all the science now. And I just kept it going. It was sort of my safe place all the way through my harmony exams and my fugue exam. I would read Stephen Hawking, and I would the science was a sort of a place of joy. Finally get to bring them together. And I was the first guest composer at Fermilab, which has this amazing residency. I'm sure if there are artists in the room, check out their residency. It's a really good one. They have a sculpture gallery, an art gallery inside the main building there, which is sort of, you can see it's designed after a magnet in the particle accelerator. And that reflection really makes it clear. It's an artistic place. Enrico Fermi designed it in such a way to inspire, because they are trying to discover the building blocks of the universe, and you need creativity to do that. And they discovered some of the quarks which we're made of, which was good to know what's going on there. That's me next to a very expensive pipe that I was drumming on. And then they told me how much it was, and so I've been putting these projects together, and because of sort of the coalescence, ended up being a resident composer here, writing music about astrophysics, and then I just sort of asked if they would have me, and here I am. So that's if you want to do a residency somewhere, just ask them. Maybe they'll say yes. So I want to talk about some of the craft, because there's a running thread. I think, well, there are a few running threads, aren't there? But the one that sort of gets my brain teasing is this idea of sonification, which sometimes gets autocorrected to sonication, which I think is cleaning your teeth. So it's not that. It is turning data into sound. Even more straightforward, something that wasn't sound, turning it into sound. Which, we sort of think of it as maybe a bit exotic, but it's just like visualization, but we're using sound, which is maybe a less common medium for getting data across. But that means, for me, it has a lot of untapped potential. So here is the most famous sonification. I didn't make it. And if you know what it is, keep quiet. I'm going to play it to you. I'm not going to tell you what it is. So if you don't know, please, I'd like you to guess. What is this? This is something that wasn't sound, but it's been turned into sound. Pretty good, right? Don't tell us, but who knows what that is, just because they've heard it before? Okay. The scientists know. Okay, somebody who doesn't know, any guesses? Somebody who's heard it for the first time today, because it's quite a magical sound. Yes?
Oh, no, I just heard it for the first time.
Oh, okay, I got you. Anybody, yes? It is a form of wave. It's not light waves. There are lots of different kinds of waves. And the light waves, one of the most commonly thought about, sound waves being another. This is a kind of wave that was first proposed by Einstein. And yes? It is. Give you a round of applause for you there. So it is gravitational waves of two stellar mass black holes colliding and forming another larger black hole. And this is, gravity, whenever an object moves, it affects all of the other objects in the universe, in theory, via its gravity. But that doesn't happen instantaneously. It has to travel, and it travels at the speed of light, which was proposed by Einstein, but very hard to measure because it's such a tiny difference. So you need something absolutely massive to move, and then you need an incredibly sensitive detector. And here it is, this giant laser, which is in an L shape. There's two of them, or maybe three now. There might be one. How many are? There's two in America. There might be one. Scientists, tell me after. The laser interferometer gravitational wave observatory. And many composers and artists sort of heard that sound and thought, that's cool. But I really got entranced by it. And I was making friends with astrophysicists at the time. I'll leave this one, come back to this one when when I'm trying to indoctrinate the students into doing this. I put this one up, and this is why sonification is interesting to me. But I'll bring that one back. The project that we created, Black Hole Symphony. Anna Barnatska there, she's a research associate here, and she invited me to work with some of her data, and it grew into this idea to really tell the story of black holes, not as they are in science fiction, but as they really are, with as much of the data as we have. And there's a lot more to it. So I'm going to talk about a couple of scenes and sort of how we created that. And it's a planetarium project. So the first thing Anna sent me, there she is, by the way. She's a scientist and a biotech researcher. She sent me this data set, and it's if you know what it is, maybe it's more interesting. But it's a lot of artists, I think, get intimidated, or audience members. You have a graph like that because there's there's just not a lot of context. Maybe there's something going on here, but this turns out to be jets of plasma being shot out from a black hole. The black hole is less than a pixel on this image. Shooting out, the black hole rotates, and then off-axis jets coming out perpendicular light years into space. And because of the energies involved, it fluctuates depending on what the black hole ate. We're okay. Depending on what the black hole ate, it fluctuates. So you can see, to turn that into music over 200 days, I can take the intensity rising and falling and convert to a melody. See if you can follow along with me. So each note is 1 day of jets, and the higher the intensity, the higher the note. So you're going to go up here. There's a few extra days as a bonus on the end there. But you can see that, so there's my synthesizer playing it back. It's a lot more interesting when you hear it. And it shows that there's these big, the black hole ate something pretty chunky at that point. See if you can hear that again when we weave it into the orchestra. So that line is there. Now we have a full orchestra with the black hole melody. That's just one of the scenes. So black holes, they don't just suck things in like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. They emit light and plasma and radiation of various different kinds. I love to show these. We were having a conversation over tea about what black holes do. And Anna drew this wonderful drawing for me, which I've kept. I'm not sure. I didn't ask her whether I could show this, but she'll let me know. And this is, I think, a work of art in itself. But you can more or less tell that's radio, infrared, visible UV. This is light. So again, not a vacuum cleaner. Light is being emitted from the black hole, and the different frequencies of light come from different places. So they're not just, there's the singularity, that's just an infinitesimally small point, but around that are many interesting sites. Thank you, yes. You can see that this drawing becomes this data from Mojgan Azadi, who's a researcher here. And we wanted to take, the different colors show different locations. And we thought, well, this is light, a huge spread of light. Visible light is just a tiny slice in the middle. This is all the way sort of low radio up radio up to gamma rays. So we take the sonification and we say, okay, instead of looking at this data, we're going to listen to it. The advantage is the ear has this much wider frequency response. We can only see about one doubling of frequency in light, which is less than an octave, if you know your musical terms. Anybody know how many octaves of sound we can hear? If you've got really good hearing, it's about 10. If we had more time, we could do a hearing test. So that's an order of magnitude more. So I can take this data and I can represent it through sound. And I could sort of put it up on here, but you're going to help me actually do this now. This is actually an interactive thing where we take this light from different places and we turn it into the black hole chords, which is sort of a whole summer of work. You're going to help me, and we're going to use your phones to be the speaker system. So what you need to do is scan this QR code, and you should get a link. And you can sign up if you want to hear about concerts, or you can skip, totally fine. We had to put that in there. But then you'll get a location. So tap where you're sitting. It doesn't have to be exact. There's a test sound button. There's a test sound button which you could push. You'll need to get your media volume up. There we go. We've heard that sound before. Push the test sound button, make sure it's actually working. You can go to live.multiverse.music if the QR code doesn't work. I've got you all on my screen here, you see. We'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. So I'm into the interactive bit now. Here we go. So we're going to build a black hole, and we will start with the galaxy which contains the black hole, which is the stars. And that is going to be everywhere. So I put that on all of you. That's the light from the hydrogen of the stars, sonified. Let's go in a bit. We're going to do the torus, which is a donut shape. I'm going to put that sort of in the middle of the room. That's going to go just to people a little further in. The dust grains, slightly higher frequency. You'll hear that it's higher pitched. We go in further, we get clouds of gas heated to incredible temperatures. The broad line clouds. At the very center, close to the singularity, it's going to be about here, we're going to get the iron line, which is superheated iron releasing X-rays, which is a little bit like a horror movie, but it has a Doppler shift due to the rotation. Here are some jets of plasma similar to what we did before, shooting out of the side. We'll have one over there. And we'll have another one over there. And there is our black hole. Please put your phone on the ground and have a little walk around with me. So we can experience it's the three-dimensional. 1 minute.
We're good. We're going to go a little later.
So see if you can find the English horn, which is the dust torus. Round about there. The singularity is very strong there. Well, it's the accretion disk, really. We can't. The actual singularity doesn't emit anything that we can detect. If we go to that flickering sound over here, we've got a jet. This is very strong with this one. That fluctuates a lot. There's another jet over that side of the room. So it's much more complicated than the science fiction view of a black hole. It's a complex interacting system. I'm trying to find the other jet, which I think should be.
Never even thought about that.
Should be. There's the other jet. I might have missed. I can reassign it to you. I can put you back in. We don't have a 100% success rate with the phones. I can turn it up. Let's have a bigger one. If it doesn't work, let me know after the show. I can let my student Wilson add some more fixes.
It's okay, this is brilliant.
Oh, I lost a jet. Let's put that back. Huh?
Why are they all different? When you look at the phones, you see different.
You can see this. It's to do with the three-dimensional geography of a black hole galaxy. I have it in my image there. You see that there are different structures as you get closer.
All right, so each of us are a different structure.
Right, depending on where you are in the room.
Okay, thank you.
So I definitely would like to add a visual component as well. You have to use your imagination. Yes, chat. Here we go. Should we turn the black hole off? Here we go. All right, thank you very much. So I think that's it for me. We're going to chat.
We're going to chat a little bit.
Okay, so we all share these universal concerns of the cosmos and the spheres and so on. And they drive both artists and scientists in their respective practices. Can you each respond to this idea of seeking the nature of the universe?
In 2 words.
Yes.
Seeking the nature of the universe.
Yes. So, I mean, it seems that drives both of you, that you're, like all of us, like, how do we get here? Why are we here?
Right.
What's going to happen? Those universal themes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems maybe a subtext or an undercurrent, maybe.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, I think in the broader scale, all of the projects, when I present them, like in this case, it seems like a very tidy, neat package, sort of, as a narrative. But most of the projects start out as open questions that I have that I'm really struggling with. And making these projects are a way for me to sort of process and grapple and make sense of it.
I just want to say, I really appreciated that you exposed, yourself in a certain way, that these are really, this work in progress and how it progresses and what you think about and what you use and so on.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of things that you reject or that you pursue and then you...
I'm a bit like a dog with a bone.
I see.
In that once I've got a bite, I don't let go, which can lead me to long periods of not doing anything because I know that I feel that it should work, but there's something not there or not right, and I don't know what it is. And then, I just need to delve into somebody else's work usually,
Right.
and also teaching to find these puzzle pieces. When you talk about the sort of finding the nature of the universe, I mean, do you have that feeling that it's all connected? And you try to put it into words, and maybe if you're a poet, you get somewhere with that. But if you're a visual artist, you feel like maybe you're getting somewhere to just that feeling that underneath it all, there are these waves and these patterns and the interaction of order and chaos and shapes within shapes within shapes, and, fractals. You feel that it's there, and then you try. That's not mine. You try to. That gets me up every morning. You try to get a little closer with each project, and then you have that moment of ecstasy where you think that you've taken a step, and then you realize that there's many more to go, and I think you just keep going until you
Right.
drop down.
Right.
So,
And I know for many people in the visual arts, you don't really know what you're doing until you're doing it, and then you make something that speaks to you, that you sort of have that.
you're the first audience.
Exactly, right. I often tell that to students, that, so and then the work becomes a mirror, becomes a way of seeing something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't even, there's one project I had that I didn't realize, like 6 years later, I was like, oh, that's what that project was about. What I was struggling with or thinking through at the moment, it was about this on the surface, but it was about a bunch of other things too
Right.
that I really couldn't make sense of at the moment.
Right,
But-
and it seems there's that parallel between art and science of iteration, failure, failure.
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
just, again, or 6 years later, oh, that's what it was,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we are sort of talking about this, but I just want to cite this thought that I had, that artists and scientists look at and make manifest what is otherwise invisible, exemplifying the importance of noticing, observing, listening. It's the same, skill set. For artists and scientists in all fields, the process of making something visible or understood is inherent. I mean, I think that's that thing that drives you. Yeah.
And that visibility, when we use that in the broadest sense, right? The sensory.
Yeah, right.
multi-sensory.
Visible or inherent in many ways.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny, as you're mentioning that, I remember in one project, some of the text for the project where I did the beach for Carl Sagan, I talk about the invisible, and the curator was like fixing it as a typo all the time. Like, you mean invisible?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's actually invisible, because I feel like invisible seems to suggest there's some inherent property of invisibility or something, but invisible I feel like connotes some sense that it has to do with like perspective or sensory apparatus or instrument or whatever. There's something that is available, as opposed to something that's categorically not. And so I hadn't thought about that till you mentioned it now.
Potentially visible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that visibility might be through sound.
It's very.
Yeah.
I love what you said about the octaves.
Yeah, I should have brought my piano really, but
Yeah.
it's very arbitrary that we have the senses the way that we do. I mean, it's to do with our sun and our evolution, and until we find some aliens, we see what senses they've got. I guess we won't quite know how much of it is. It's just a way that life evolves. But we could have heard light and seen sound, and so we could. If we were a snake, we could sense infrared or ultraviolet if we were an insect. We don't know how the way that homing pigeons navigate might have some quantum physics and quantum entanglement involved with, or possibly not.
Right, yeah.
Our senses are sort of a funny grab bag because of this. Where we find ourselves, and it didn't have to be that way. So I feel like we've got a lot of license to jumble things up as artists and create our own synesthesia in a different way for each project.
Well, here's another thought, which is in our a previous conversation, we had talked about your mutual fascination with the celestial sphere, and also the many other meanings of sphere of influence, range, domain, scope. And can you, maybe either one of you or both, elaborate more about spheres, celestial and otherwise?
There's a lot of spheres to think about.
Right.
But,
Well,
I mean, it's
yeah, I mean, Andrew was doing the terrestrial sphere, right?
Right,
So-
terrestrial sphere, and it's I'm trying to, and then of course I think about horrible things like the co-prosperity sphere of Japan in World War II or other sort of like, but yeah, the spheres of influence. I mean, it's interesting because it's kind of making me think of everything you're doing with gravity and these black holes, right? Like in these event horizons, or I guess it's always spherical, isn't it?
well, on the very large scale of the universe, you get a lot of spheres, but then on the microscopic scale, you get spheres as well. It's I guess it's equal distance from a point, and it's a shape that comes up when you're looking in different places, and you just it's all connected through the physics.
I have a hard time thinking about spheres without thinking about rotation, right, or movement. I think just because I'm terrestrial and I live on Earth and other planets, right, are in orbit and rotate. I mean, right now I'm working on a mobile for a different project. That's a sphere. So it's a large mobile that's supposed to represent sort of Earth's climate system, but it riffs off an amillary sphere, right? These kind of cosmological spheres that are made, that I think the celestial sphere of the celestial sphere of Paul Manship is one. This amillary sphere where you use the cosmos, but now of course it's kind of the inverted sky, right? And so I think I'm really interested in this idea of the weird parallel between these sort of amillary spheres, which represent a universe, and then planets themselves, which are, of course, things within that and have a very different, are represented by the same kind of dimensional form, but from our encounter would be very different, And then, of course, I'm on the sphere right now, and I don't even know it because it seems flat because I'm so small. But yeah.
I want to quote Alan Lightman, and people who have been to Catalyst maybe have heard me say this before, but I really like it, and I just want your response. So this is paraphrasing novelist and physicist Alan Lightman, who early on said to me, "Both science and art need metaphor to find something new. At some point, science needs to go beyond metaphor, and art can stay within the metaphor." I'm just wondering if any part of that resonates with you. It seems maybe that both of you are, because you're both kind of scientists, artists, that you're in the metaphor, but you also are outside of it
Metaphor,
to understand things.
that's one thing, standing in for another in a metaphor in order to help us understand. And I guess you don't always know if you have a metaphor. It just makes me think of the way that we've learned about atoms, and the Bohr model of the atom as like a solar system with electrons flying around it. That turns out to be right when you're measuring it in a certain way, but it's completely wrong if you think about quantum mechanics. So what you thought was an accurate way of looking at the world could actually just be a metaphor, and there's a deeper, more true level. I guess you never quite know if you've got there, but you just keep digging. I think with art, I mean, we might have intentions that, this music is going to be a metaphor for the struggle of a society to live harmoniously. But I think if you really, it's good to have those intentions going in, but in the end, it's going to create itself through you. And at a certain point, that metaphor is going to vanish. I think if you're doing it right, and you'll end up with something that goes beyond standing in for something else and becomes its own expression of something human that we're all trying to access as artists. And whether we succeed, I guess, is in the eyes and the ears of the beholder. So I guess I don't like that idea that we're just making a metaphor. I think maybe we start with one, but we should try to go beyond.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before, but my first reaction was, said like a true physicist. I mean, it's just like, because everything then just kind of comes down to math, right? but is math metaphorical? I don't know. I think the question of metaphor is a very deep one, because I feel like on the surface of it, it's about the likeness or similarity of something, and you can say, well, there's all kinds of things about the way human brains evolved to make these kinds of analogies or metaphors, often, of course, that don't make any real sort of sense underneath the surface from a scientific point of view. But metaphor, I think, is also a matter of like pattern regularity. I think the way we talk about metaphor is, and the ones that we think of are just like also, again, like one level of it. And so what is it about metaphor that's about like the fundamental pattern regularities of things? I think that actually goes to the heart of physics and math and other things. So I don't know. I think I want to interrogate what he means by metaphor and what it is, because I think there's an easy level to speak about it, and then I think there's another level that even I haven't really thought through.
Just interestingly, a recent book by Alan Lightman is, I think the title is something like Spirituality and Science, and he proposes that we are hardwired for transcendence. And so maybe that's his way of dealing with metaphor. Yeah, it's a good book. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
And he was, just by the by, one of our first speakers.
Right, for Catalyst.
For Catalyst, yeah.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Maybe we have time for, it is running late, but maybe a couple minutes for any thoughts or questions from the audience. Should I give you a mic?
Hi, you're both unicorns, which is great. You've shown wonderful examples of science-influenced art, which you're both masters of. In your experience with your residencies, can you give me an example of art-influenced science? I'm just thinking a lot about that these days.
I can talk about something that has sort of happened early on. We were looking at something that Andrew touched on, the cosmic microwave background, which is this mysterious light that's left over from the very early universe, the oldest light that we can see. And it's people describe it as a sort of noise. When they detected it, they thought it was just noise, and maybe it was the pigeons in the antenna, and then they shot the pigeons, and it didn't go away. So it turned out to be the early universe, but it isn't completely noise, and you analyze it, and you get waves within it. And the physicist we were working with said, "Oh, you should try sonifying it." He was at NYU, and he thought, well, it should just come out as a perfect harmony, like an overtone series on a note on a piano, and it certainly did not. It comes out with this rather interesting jazzy sort of sonority if you sort of center all the peaks, and that took him by surprise, and it led to some very good discussions, and that harmony contains a lot of information about the recipe for our universe, and it led into a journey, and it's now a big part of my new symphony, First Billion Years, which I'm about halfway through. So give me another 500,000, I'll get there.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. My question is specifically for David, but there is some crossover into your work. So you're taking themes or ideas and translating them into a two-dimensional sort of Cartesian space. And musically, I'm wondering, I see you're using 12 tones in standard notation. In your compositions, do you expand beyond that into a microtonal system that could map into a graph space and therefore take two-dimensional images or relationships between different tones?
It's different depending on the project. I mean, I'm thinking about the biology of the listener and what is, I'm trying to design music that engages well with our brain and our attention span, and but also our culture. The scales, the major, the minor, the modes that go back to ancient Greece, the Dorian, the Aeolian. They're things that we've all heard since we were a baby. So if I engage with those, I immediately overcome a barrier, which is what I'm trying to do by communicating. But however, it doesn't always work. And a project, stars have these more or less a black body radiation where there's a sort of gentle curve to the color, but if you look closer, there are these little lines of missing light in the star, and that's to do with what the star is made of. And so every star has slightly different pattern of colors, and those are packed very, very tightly. So if I try to do them on notes of the piano, I get about 10 notes between C and C sharp, which doesn't work. So for that one, I've got to go microtonally, which I could load it up for you, but it's a work. It's the new symphony actually, trying to sonify stars. And if you play all those notes at once, you cannot pick them apart. But if you present them one by one, then you can. So yeah, it's sort of working with the hardware and the software of the ear. But yeah, microtonal composition has got it's another big sort of resource and an ocean that not many people have dared to sail. But project by project, I like to tap into it myself.
Maybe one more from the audience.
Hi. So I had a question mostly about maybe an additional sphere, which is the political.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Andrew's project, his discussion of the celestial sphere and at the dawn of the world wars. And I just didn't know if either of you could comment on that, imagining, I suppose, like a universe perhaps without humans within it, or very few humans within it, at least how I see some of these pieces.
I heard a wise person earlier in the evening told me that holding an event like this was an act of courage and perhaps rebellion, in that these institutions, for some reason, are in the crosshair right now. And yet there's something that I think we're all incredibly proud of. And there's something that, if we look at humanity, we've got a lot of skeletons in the closet. But then we look at the way that we have expanded our knowledge and learned to appreciate our brief candle of our lifetime in this vast cosmos. I think it's something we can all be incredibly proud of, and we should be standing up for. So I'm very grateful for events like this and for Cambridge and Harvard for existing, and I think just by being here, we should do more, but we're all doing what we should do and should continue.
That is so beautifully said. Thank you so much. And that might be a perfect place to end our formal conversation. I want to thank you both so much. Just like awesome and wonderful.